Complex fractions are fractions within a fractions. So what you want to do first is create a single fraction with this. So remember, when you divide fractions, what you're actually doing is flipping the second one over and multiplying. So this is going to turn into 4 over a squared. Because if you multiply the numerator and denominator by 4 over a squared, the denominator is going to cancel out. That's why you actually flip the bottom fraction or second fraction over and multiply. So now you're left with a times 4 over 2a squared. So you can either multiply across, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel out common factors. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. A divided by a squared is a in the denominator. So my answer is 2 divided by a. So to state in restrictions is I'm going to look at all of my denominators in the beginning of the problem, in the middle of the problem, and at the end. And I don't want to have a situation where I have 0 in the denominator. So I cannot set 2 equal to 0 or 4 equal to 0, but I can set a squared and a equal to 0. So the restrictions are just going to be a can't be 0. Okay, for the second one, I'm going to take the denominator and multiply by the reciprocal. So it's going to be 8x cubed over 3y. So this is my new problem. So again, I'm going to cancel out the common factors. So I have 6 divided by 3 is 2. X cubed divided by x is x squared. And then I'll have y squared on the bottom. So my answer will be 2 times 8, x squared. So that's going to be 16x squared in the numerator over y squared. So when I do the restrictions, I want to look at the denominator at each point. So I have x times y, 8x cubed, 3y, and y squared. So my restrictions are going to be x can't be 0 because that's of xy right here, and because of 8x cubed, and y can't be 0. Okay, number 3. Again, I'm going to take the bottom fraction and multiply the top and the bottom by 4p minus 1 over 4p squared. The reason I put 4p minus 1 in parentheses is that I can factor out this. So I could factor out 8p minus 2. I could factor out a 2, a greatest common factor of 2. So in that case, I'll have 2 times the quantity 4p minus 1. So my numerator will be 18p times 4p minus 1, and my denominator is going to be 2 times the quantity 4p minus 1 times 4p squared. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out common factors again. So I could cancel out the 4p minus 1. The p divided by p squared is just going to turn into p squared. And then 18 divided by 2 is going to be 9. So my numerator is just going to be 9. And my denominator is going to be, the only thing that's left is p squared. So it's going to be 9 over p squared. So again, for the restrictions, I'm going to set this equal to 0, this equal to 0, this equal to 0, this equal to 0. So this means that p can't be 0 because you have 9 over p squared. And p cannot also be 1/4 because if I solve for p in this denominator, I'll add 1 and divide by 4. If I solve for p, set it equal to 0 in this denominator, I'll have p equals 2/8, and that cannot happen. So those are my restrictions. Okay, number 4. I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by k squared over k squared minus 1. Because that's my denominator. So I'm left with this. So I can see right here that this will factor out into, I'll just rewrite this over. I have k minus 1 over k times k squared over, and I'm going to factor this. This is difference of squares. So this factors into k plus 1, k minus 1. So at this step, I can cancel out the k minus 1s, and I have k squared divided by k, which makes just a k. So my answer will be k is on the top, and k plus 1 is in the denominator. So now I'm going to look at my restrictions here. So if I circle all of my denominators, in the beginning, the middle, at the end, my restrictions are going to be k can't be 0 because they're right here. K can't be -1 and 1 because of right here. So -1 and 1. Okay, number 5. My denominator, you can think about as putting this over 1. So if I flip it over, I'm going to have 1 over 12r minus 12. So in this case right here, I could factor out a 15. So it's going to be, oops, I said 15, I wrote k. So it's going to be 15 times 1 minus r over 15r squared times 1 over, and I'm going to factor out a 12. 12 times the quantity r minus 1. So now I can cancel out common factors. So I can cancel out the 15s. And remember the trick where you had 1 minus r and r minus 1. This was a minus b, b minus a. You can actually factor out a -1 of here. So if you take both of these off, you can write a -1. So in my numerator, I'm going to be left with -15 because 15, actually the 15's got canceled out. I'm just going to be left with -1. So it's going to be -1 over 12r squared. So let's look at our restrictions. We have this denominator, 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 denominators, denominators. So my restrictions are going to be r can't be 0 because of that monomial that I have, and r can't be 1. And then the last one here looks like a little bit more factoring. I'm just going to flip these over again. So this, I'm first going to factor out. So I could factor out a 2 right here. So this is going to be 2 times the quantity m squared minus m minus 20 over 3 times m plus 4 times, remember this is going to be flipped over, so I'm going to factor out a 9m, GCF, greatest common factor, 9m m plus 4 over, I can factor out a m squared m minus 5. So looking more carefully at this one, I can actually factor this out to be 2 times m minus 5 m plus 4, and then this will be 3. I guess I'm just going to write this over again. 3 times m plus 4 times 9m times m plus 4 over m minus 5 times m squared. So now that everything's factored out, I can cancel out factors. So I can cancel out, a common mistake that I see is like people will cancel out this, both of these with this one, but you can only cancel out one of these common factors with this common factor. So it's a 1-to-1 relationship. These two cancel out. My m minus 5s will cancel out. On the top, I have a 9, or numerator, I have a 9 and a 3, so that will turn into 3. I'm also noticing I have an m over m squared, so that will turn into m. So what I'm left with on the top is going to be 6, because 3 times 2 times the quantity m plus 4 over m. Now what you can't do is you cannot cancel out this m and this m, because this is over a plus or minus, so you can't cancel those two out. So that's my answer, and now I'm going to look at my restrictions. Go back up here, so this factored out to here. These two are the same. This was in my denominator, so I have to look at this expression too. This was in my denominator. This, my denominator, denominator. So let's make sure that we catch them all. So the first part, m can't be -4. Right here, this expression factored out was in my original denominator before I flipped it. So this means m can't be 0 because I have 9m, and m can't be -4, but I already have that. M can't be 0, I already have that. M can't be 5, that's a new one. M can't be -4, I already have that. M can't be 5, M can't be 0, M can't be 0, so I'm good. So my solution is kind of messy, is this, and then my restrictions are right here.